Hi.
Okay, it's an awful honor to be talking to you. It's such a great thing for me, and I will never even try to pronounce your name because I will not do honor
No
to it.
worries.
So how are you pronouncing it?
I pronounce it Veerasunthorn. I know it's not like how it's spelled, but that's fine.
I'm very much used that my name, my German name, is getting butchered in America, uh, especially my first name, which turns into Johannes, which is great.
That's
But
that's
on the other hand, well, um, I dived into your live a little bit in preparation for your for this interview, and I'm amazed of it, and I would love to talk about your living in Thailand, then making the giant leap to the US, going to school, going into the industry. That's unbelievably interesting. I listened to Bobby Chew's wonderful interview with you on schoolism.
oh
Great. I would love to talk about that, but we have just 15 minutes. So I have to concentrate on your work as your masterful work on as head of story on Raya. So please forgive me. I'm aware of all the other things, but well, I'm a big fan of animation and a big fan of visual effects and of visual storytelling. And you work for me, and from my perspective as a humble German fan, you work in the most thrilling and extraordinary part of animation because you are between the creators, the script, and the whole production, and you are the architects of story. You have to make it visible. It's you are the guys with the girls with a blank page, and you have to make it visible, and that must be a hell of a job of communicating, exploring ideas. So, what is a head of story in your words?
um, Head of story is the leader of the team of story artists, and what we do is that we collaborate, like you said, with directors and writers, and we translate the script into the visual storytelling that you finally eventually see on screen, but we're more like a testing ground, the blueprints. We trial and fail again and try again until we find the best possible versions of the film.
Could you and what is the most important part? You once said in one interview, and that was very interesting for me. The two terms you are mostly interested in have something clarified, understandable, and on the other side, the entertainment section. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I think when you read the script and one description, it can be told many different ways. So our
Okay.
department is trying to focus on like what is the point of view of this story? Who are we telling it from? For example, if you were to tell the same event from Raya versus Namari, it will be very different. So we're trying to hone in on that and deliver that information. The number one thing is the clarity. So it has to be clear because it's on screen for such a short amount of time. And it's drawings, so you can't really get all the nuance that the Disney animator will come in and deliver later. But that's okay for us. We just want to get the point across clearly. And the number two things that is very important is entertainment value. So you're gonna see this on screen. It's gonna live for however long a sequence is 2 minutes
Eternity.
for eternity. But for this 2 or 3 minutes of this sequence, it has to be worthwhile. It has to earn its place in the film. And sometimes we draw something that we thought was very cool, but when we look at the big picture, it no longer has a meaning. It doesn't drive story forward. So sometimes we end up cutting those, even though we all love it dearly. But then in the span of 2 to 3 years that we work on a movie, sometimes it makes its way back, and that happens all the time. So it's a very fluid process.
I'm from Germany, and we are known for overthinking things, and I would I would I would go into shock because of all the doubt I would develop. Is it the best way to tell the story? How are you not doubting yourself all the time?
Oh, I do all the time, and we all do all the time. And when you stare at a blank page, it's very intimidating to be like, is it going to be the right, the best version I can do today? But luckily, we work with a fantastic team. I feel like in animation, it's a very collaborative art form. You're not just sitting here and drawing your best picture, and then you're like, that's it, just take it and model it and animate it, and it's done. Like, I think it helps, it builds you to become very humble. I would bring my scene, even as head of story, to the pitch, and then it will get, criticized or questioned or pluses. That's what we call it. When you come bring your scene to your team, they throw in ideas. And as long as I work in animation, as many years I have been here, it always gets better because we have this team as resources to help each other. So our goal is not to make our scene the best. We are making the movie the best possible versions, and everyone is helping each other. Even though sometimes it's hard to hear when the notes is correct and you spent like 2-3 weeks drawing it, you're like, yes, this is the best thing that I have ever come up with. And then the next person say, wouldn't it be better if this were to happen or we switch this? And if they're correct, they're correct. And that part of self-doubt, I think we know that each other have that. So it's okay. Like, I'm not getting judged by other people. We're the same team.
I was about to ask, who's your sounding board? Who are you going to rethink your decisions?
Well, we have directors who would look at the work and will give notes based on their vision. But within the team, sometimes we go to each other's office. Pre-pandemic, we will stop by each other's office, and then they'll be like, oh, can you take a look? And then when you pitch it, we're trying to pitch it without explaining too much. And if the person didn't get the idea across, then usually like I would feel it when I click through and I start to think in my head of like, oh yeah, that's not clear. Oh, that person's not gonna get it. Oh, this doesn't get a laugh. So you start to spot the problematic spot, and then you can like kind of bounce around idea with your teammates, whoever they are, before you go to the pitching room, and then you do that again in the pitching room.
How many iterations do you have to go through in let's say in average for such a story until everybody is satisfied?
Yeah, for each film at Disney, typically we have about 6 to 8 screenings cycle. So that means that we make the entire movie about 6 to 8 times. And then we screen it at the studio. We get notes from the crew member at the studios, whichever department, which is great because they're kind of like the real audience, although more knowledge about film. So they were able to give very educated notes of like, this doesn't work because you didn't set it up in the earlier part. And we'll be like, okay, we thought we'd set it up, but it's not clear, obviously. So we have to change that.
But you have, I saw your Instagram, your Pinterest, your Tumblr things. It's adorable, and I would love to talk about that too. But you have extraordinary drawing skills, in my opinion. And you are, I think, great in storytelling, but you also have to be a great communicator to talk to your team and talk to all the other people, the other departments, to get everybody on board. Which skill is the hardest to learn?
To me, it's funny you bring up the communication skills. I feel like that was something I had to learn on this project, because before this, I'm a story artist and I just have to communicate my scene. I didn't have to talk to as many people and get them on board and communicate the big picture vision from directors. So I get to practice this hardcore on this project. And then I realized that I can't just assume people would just know what's in my head. And I have to get over the fear of having English as a second language and thinking that like, oh, am I saying this right? What is the word for this? Are they understanding this? But luckily we all work in the visual medium. So sometimes I would just draw like, oh, how about this chart? Because then you can reveal the next information in the next panel and don't have to throw it all at once.
So if I understand that correctly, In your team, you have people who are very good in developing action scenes, to do the emotional stuff, and to come along with subtext and everything that
Yeah.
makes a Disney film a Disney film. What is it you are great at?
That's a good question. If I have to,
I'm sorry.
criticize or rate myself, I think I'm interested in character, in making a character specific and entertaining. That's probably what I enjoy doing the most. As a head of star, you kind of have to be able to dive into all types of scenes because you're helping your team members. If you're looking at the action scene, you have to be able to give notes of like how to make that more interesting or dynamic. But I have to say that my team are all very, very talented. So I didn't have to really hold their hands. They'll come to the table with whatever their superpower is already. And what I'm there to help is to help clarify the big picture stuff. Because sometimes when you work in an isolation, you think everything has to go into one scene. But when you look at the 90 minutes of the film, it doesn't have to be like that. So when you work in just one scene, sometimes you lose sight of that. So I think the role of head of story is to come in and say, okay, we only have to focus about this content, and the rest of the stuff we can move it to the other scene. The other person's doing it, so you don't have to carry all that burden.
So goal is not to be hated by everyone on the end of the day, because you have to say sometimes no.
Yeah, sometimes you see like really, really, really amazing stuff, and you're like, wow, like I really love this. I know it's happening in 2 scenes later, and sometimes you have to make the call like, this is such an amazing thing that directors should see it. And sometimes we'll bring it to the pitch with the caveat of like, I know this might be too much, but I think there's something here. There's a gem here that I think we can keep some of it, if not all.
Just for me to understand, your department is in which way connected to layout and to character design? Because that must be very related to what you do.
Yeah, character design kind of comes slightly before, and sometimes when there's incidental characters and we don't have the design for it, people will just draw. Like if you have a village to draw, then it's up to you to come up with whoever it is. And then like for us, we don't really worry about that, but we know that Vista is gonna do an amazing job making everyone look great. And for layout, we know that they'll take our work and they'll put a real camera angles, they'll make something fancy with it while pertaining the ideas of the scene. I think every step of the way, for me, I just trust the other department, like they're like amazing magicians in what they do, and I'm not too worried about. I think they're gonna make out my work better, and it's always happens that way. So I'm like, here you go, layout, and they'll come in, and sometimes they're questions of like, oh, do you need these two specific shots, or you can just do a camera move to combine them into one shot. And most of the time they're correct. And I think it's just harder for me to draw it into one camera swing. So I separated them into 2 shots that delivers the same information.
I like the word mostly in this context. They are mostly right. Well,
people have their opinion, right? And you spend a lot of time and sometimes the set is totally different than what you imagined as a story artist. And you thought the door is on the left, and then the door is actually on the right. So they will have to flip everything, and then we will say sorry to layout. Like, sorry, we draw.
No, I understand. We have to have all. We all have trust issues, and it's very. I think it's very tough to on the one side stand your ground, on the other side develop that trust that everybody works for the picture in the end. And it's great to see that here. But we have, as I was told, we just have a couple of minutes left. We have to tackle one more thing outside of Raya. The topic diversity is a big thing at present, and especially also in the animation industry. We have great things like initiatives like Women in Animation and I attended a panel last week with Jennifer Ju Nelson and Ronnie Del Carmen. That was a very interesting panel about the role of Asian animators in the business. What is your opinion in that? Where are we now, and where do we have to go from here?
I think we have come a long way. When I started in animation, usually I'm either the only female or the only minority in the whole crew. And at Disney, I think the younger generations of artists that's coming up, I see more diverse pool of talent. And I think, it will keep going that way as they come up the ranks. They'll get into directorial position, leadership position. But I think it's part of the leadership responsibility too. I like the story room that is balanced. So when I cast people onto the show, I'm trying to keep in mind of people's life experiences. So they're not all grew up in one place and thinking one thing, because then no one is challenging each other's idea and bringing anything new. So I think that part is very important, regardless of like gender or race. I just want people to have healthy, differing opinions so we can find new perspective for the story instead of telling the same story over and over.
I'm so sorry, we have to stop, and it was great talking to you. It was like one second for me. I'm an ardent admirer now. I follow you on Instagram and everything else, and I will have a keen watch on what you do next. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for your time. It's nice talking to you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, remember what we're looking for, and don't trust anyone.
Whoa, what?
Hey, baby. Where are your parents? Hey, who's baby? What? Really? A con baby? Impressive. We could use someone like you. Let's catch you up. My name is Raya. Our lands have been at war for as long as we can remember. Our people never see eye to eye.
My daughter, I believe our people can come together again, but someone has to take the first step.
Now, in order to restore peace, we must find the last dragon.
I wish to join this fellowship of butt kickery.
Let's go. We'll have to watch our backs. We're not the only ones looking. 6 years of searching. Please let this be it. Oh, mighty Sisu!
Who said that?
We really need your help.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not like the best dragon. Have you ever done like a group project, but there's like that one kid who didn't pitch in as much, but still ended up with the same grade?
We're doomed.
You and the dragon are coming with me.
My sword here says we're not. The world's broken. You can't trust anyone.
Maybe it's broken because you don't trust anyone. You just have to take the first step. I just shape changed.
Dragons can do that?
Look how close my butt is to my head. It's gonna make digestion so much faster.
In theaters or ordered on Disney Plus with Premier Access, March 5th.